So Rob Hayes is the Chief Business Officer for Dow Jones. In this role, he oversees growth across Dow Jones's franchises, including the Wall Street Journal, Barron's, MarketWatch, and other brands. I got to know Rob when I was at NBC a few years back, and I just thoroughly enjoyed working with him. I always thought of Rob as a visionary of what is possible in the digital world. And he's doing that now. He's driving his businesses through various platforms, including audio, video, events, strategic partnerships, and gaming. And I always admired, Rob, the way that you approached deal making and how strategic you were in everything that you did at NBC. And it's been great to keep in touch with you. Rob has more than 2 decades of experience in global digital business platform transformation. He was an executive vice president at NBC Entertainment at Peacock and NBC Universal, and helped lead the launch of NBC's streaming service, as Jenny alluded to earlier. Jenny's in the house, by the way. And then we also, and as well as digital transformation. And prior to NBC, Rob was senior vice president and general manager of digital media at Showtime Networks, where he led the network's international and digital businesses, developing multi-platform, on-demand subscription platforms and services. And he began his career at HBO, launching its first international premium television channels in Central Europe and Asia. So not only does Rob have deep expertise in digital, but he also has a global point of view. Again, great to have you today, Rob. How are you doing?
Great. Thank you for having me, and hello, everybody. I'm sorry I can't be there in person. I was living in Los Angeles for 9 years when I was at NBC Universal. I miss it greatly, especially the weather, and I hope to be out there soon. But I'm excited to be here and have this conversation. So I'd probably just jump right in, Claudio, if you want to start with questions or wherever you want to take me.
Yeah, great. Why don't we start out with what you're doing at Dow Jones right now? Tell us a little bit about your role and what you're up to.
Yep, great. So I've been at Dow Jones for a little bit over a year now. I came on board in a new position called Chief Business Officer. And really what we're doing at Dow Jones, there's a new CEO here who's been here for about 2 years. And he's really focused on a new vision for Dow Jones, which is made up of we have 2 divisions, B2B and B2C. I'll focus on the B2C for this conversation, but it's Wall Street Journal, MarketWatch, Barron's Group, and IBD. So we're really focused on how do we evolve the business category with a specific focus right now on audio and video, and really about how we launch and build out a media division that can help ultimately drive subscribers and monetization. And it's been quite exciting. My career, as you mentioned, it's always funny to hear people introduce you and talk about what you've done, but has primarily been focused on entertainment. So news is a new area for me, but I do have an extensive background on entertainment and digital. So that's why, for me, it's an exciting challenge and also a lot of learning going on here, learning the news business, which is unique unto itself, for sure.
Yeah, and for sure. I mean, Rob, we talked a little bit about your mission, right? What fundamentally you're up to. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, I mean, our mission here is it's really about growing. We have a very defined mission, but it's really about for us growing our the news category and really servicing consumers, right? It's about delivering data and trusted news globally and making it very accessible for everybody across the world. So, and that's a major part of it. For me, one of my large initiatives here is to help us scale the organization and scale our content, which I think would be, as we get into this conversation, give you guys some insights of what we're thinking about there.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, we've talked a little bit about, this is such an interesting time in history. May you live in interesting times, right? And there's a proliferation of news sources out there, not just in sort of the older generations, but in young generations. And you've talked with me privately a little bit about the challenge of thinking about how to make your brands grow in the context of new generations. So how have you seen the news consumption changing? What's your perspective about news consumption?
Yeah, I mean, it's, as we all know, it's a really interesting time right now, what's going on in the world. The rapid rate of change, especially with technology and consumer behavior, is impacting all of media and entertainment. I caught the tail end of the conversation panel you just had prior, and it seems it'll probably a theme throughout this session. But for news specifically, the way people are consuming news today is very different from then how they were consuming it even 2 to 3 years ago. Specifically with the younger demographics, which we see over and over again, and these new platforms that are coming, they're coming out. So we need to change and be very evolve very quickly. A lot of it reminds me of what I did when I was at my prior role at NBC, where I came in, and at that point we were very much when I first started there, it was very much a traditional broadcast network, and really the goal there was to make it a multimedia company, and a lot of the steps that we took along there.
Tell us a little bit about, in particular, sort of Gen Zs and their consumption patterns, and kind of, we talked a little bit about the fact that many of us grew up walking by a newsstand, right, and with a deliberate intent of getting news. And wanting to sort of get up on your day and understand what's going on. The new generations, we talked a little bit about, my own kids kind of show up in the car, right, in the morning and have all kinds of interesting things to say about what's happening in the world. But I know they're not picking up like a newspaper in the morning or going deliberately to watch news. They're fed news from where they're already at. So tell us a little bit about what you've learned about the new generations and how they come upon what's going on in the world.
Yeah, no, it's exactly that. That's what's happening, right? We all, I don't know the composition of the audience, but a lot of us grew up with newspapers, being exposed to newspapers, and also just having the brand. I'll use the Wall Street Journal. It was pretty prolific and was on every newsstand. And even if you weren't buying it, you were being exposed to it. Today on these digital platforms, that's not what's happening, right? They're not being exposed to the brands, the younger generation, but what they are getting in a way that information is being serviced is all data driven through the algorithms. And then, so a lot of consumers of news right now are actually just going through their feeds, whether it's TikTok or Snap or YouTube. And depending what they're reading, the algorithms are feeding this into them. A lot of this creator first type news is getting out there. There's a lot of conversations around that and the trustworthiness of the news and what's happening out there. So for a large part, one of the reasons I came to Dow Jones was I was excited about the opportunity because I see it as a company that has incredible content, very similar to when I went to NBC and joined the ranks there, where the content was actually phenomenal, but the distribution of the content and how we got to consumers needed to be looked at differently and be a little bit more progressive. And here, that's a large part of the mission and what we're looking at right now is, and specifically, how do we evolve if you want to call it storytelling or news reporting, in this case, from what has primarily been text to this multimedia, right? So how do we get into these conversations, both with our traditional consumers, as well as these potential consumers that we're looking for? A large part of that is going to be mobile first is critical for news. Vertical content is critical for news. The ability to get into the feeds, all the tactical things of metadata and search optimization and all of those obvious things that need to get done. But then it's just the quality of the news and the capturing of attention of consumers, right? When it's very quick, going through feeds and jumping out, making people follow or engage with you. So that's the challenges I think everybody's facing right now. News is not unique to that, but I think again, I think building off the value of the brands that we have is a great starting point for us. And we've been doing it. We've been doing it. We just haven't made it I would say a priority, and that's a large part of the goal of what we're doing now and looking into it. I'd love to ask the audience, but I can't tell where people are getting their news these days, because I would imagine it's more and more mobile first, as people are starting to lifestyles are starting to change, especially now with people returning to work. There's a big opportunity there, and I mentioned video, but audio is a huge opportunity for us too, on that front too. And we do a lot of stuff with audio and podcasts, but I think it's beyond podcasts. It's really just audio is another area that's exploding.
Yeah, you mentioned like 15% of news consumption these days, which occurs via straight audio. And you also mentioned that
Mm-hmm.
two-thirds, is it, of two-thirds of Wall Street Journal prospect news consumption is via audio and video. That's fascinating. So that's explains why I think some of your excitement about some prospects and thinking about how to expand the business in that direction. So tell us a little bit about that, Rob. I think that would be really interesting to this audience. Coming in from your entertainment background, say a little bit more about that. What excited you about the prospect of working with a news organization and you touched on that, but say more about that.
Yeah, I just felt specifically with this brand, or the brand of the Wall Street Journal, I was a huge consumer and fan of that property. I hopefully everybody feels this way. You have to have passion for what you work for and the content that you work for. And in my career, I was very fortunate to be at companies where I really believed in the content that came out. And I felt the same way with the Wall Street Journal when I was approached to. I love the content. I've been a subscriber for over 30 years, but I didn't feel like they were probably as multimedia as I was doing at my prior company and prior role and evolved that business structure. So I saw a huge opportunity there for us to lean into that. So we're still, I've been here a year, so we're really going to be embarking on that. The first year was a lot of putting all the pieces in place, and now the next couple of years we'll be building this out, which is really exciting. And I do think it's going to be in areas like, vertical, short form, and long form. We're also looking at long form development of content and doing more of that, like a lot of the news publications are already embarked on. Then there's, I think, areas that are kind of emerging and really interesting, such as, auto and, the new experiences in cars with self-driving
Right.
cars,
Self-driving
cars.
cars. Yeah, we talked about
Yeah,
that too.
it's going to be really interesting to see what opportunities and new business models open up. And that's just one example.
Yeah.
And we've been looking at, I did hear you in the last panel, just looking at data. The good thing here is that it is a very data rich organization. So, but I think putting some more, like a lens of the development of content, like from that we're doing at like an entertainment and media company, and the way we look at developing content that way, with data targeting audiences and stuff like that, is going to be an exciting opportunity for us.
So part of your strategic thinking, Rob, has always been about I've noticed, is sort of redefining competition. And I think that one of the great values you probably bring to your position now is a kind of a broader look at what you think competition is versus maybe the way traditional news outlets would think of what their competition is. So tell us a little bit about that. Who do you see as your competition and that you're thinking about as you want to grow these brands across these platforms?
Yeah, that's a great question. I mean, there's, competition is really, we're all competing for people's attention, from long form to short form. So it's the traditional competitors are the obvious ones, whether it's the other news print publications or what I call the video news organizations. But then it really is like when you look at the platforms that are out there, people talk about TikTok and Snap, Instagram. Platforms like that are also competitors for us. Even platforms like, potentially on the audio space, right, where people are spending a lot of time listening to news content and getting information there. So we really need to be prolific and on as many platforms as possible right now. And then part of my role is what are the business models, right? What makes the most sense? How do we continue to build a subscription base and grow our subscriber base, but then also play at what I call the top of the funnel? So how do we get our content at the top of the funnel, have the right windowing strategies, making sure that we're targeting the right people, getting to the right people. Engagement is really critical, as we all know, in this space. And then there's areas that fall out of my purview, but it's all collaboration, which is, we all know the user experience has to be premium. We're a premium service. So making sure that we're staying current on that front, and data collection and data analytics and business intelligence, like making sure that we're fulfilling those needs so that we can continue to grow our business is super critical. And obviously through the monetization of, whether for us it's a membership or subscription sale, as well as an ad supported business. So, kind of involving and making sure that everybody's kind of moving in the same direction is critical, and setting that vision is is exciting. But as we all know, that if anybody's worked in these hybrid organizations or these very complex large media companies, there's a lot of coordination and making sure that people see the vision and are moving in that direction. So that's a large part of when you're in a senior role, as you guys know, you have to kind of make sure that you keep driving that.
Yeah. So you mentioned vision, Rob. What's your vision for the Wall Street Journal and for the brands that you're managing in the next few years? What are you trying to accomplish?
Yeah, it's funny, Claudio. I think, well, for me personally, it would be, in like 2 years from now, people will be like, what's going on over there? These guys are everywhere. Their content's amazing. They're killing it. They're growing, and they're just really feeling very relevant and contemporary. And that's the exciting part. I think that we're looking forward to, kind of bringing to the table.
Right. So in that view, and talking about what the attention economy is today out there, what do you see as some of your most significant challenges facing the news industry? But really, since this room is here about content, just in news and content, what do you think some of the most important challenges are that we're facing?
I would say the rate of change right now that's happening, both from a technology perspective. I think that the keeping people engaged, it's very hard. I think a lot of both from an entertainment and media and news perspective, we're all having similar, I would say, struggles with getting people's attention, right? Breaking through, great content ultimately prevails. But I think it's harder and harder to break through with the more platforms that are out there to get through with that. And then I think specifically with news, there's just a lot of confusion about what are the trusted brands out there. Where can I get news that I trust or news that relates to me? And I think that's something, luckily, within this organization, the standards are so incredibly high that our content is, year after year, kind of being rewarded as one of the most trusted news sources. So from that perspective, it's great, and we kind of have that foundation. I feel like other unless people are starting out new, may have a little more of a struggle on that front.
Very good. So let's shift gears a little bit and talk about kind of the central point that we're discussing in the conference, which is data and analytics. You'd mentioned some of these challenges. I know that you're putting together a team there, that you've been putting together an analytics team. How are you thinking about leveraging that kind of talent on your team? How can people here think about using analytics to come up, you mentioned something like a lot of organizations have a lot of data, but they don't have a lot of evidence or insights that can really drive the business. How do you as a leader handle that problem? How do you think about harnessing, and in your case, probably a good deal of data, right, from where you're coming from, and coming up with actionable insights, and what can people here think about in terms of the way that you would lead people to think about that?
Yeah, it's I think having that vision, knowing where you want to go in the next 18 months to 24 months, and putting what I call like a business intelligence filter against that data and that vision, so that when you're looking at the data, data can be, can tell many different stories, right? And the same data could tell different stories. So it's really trying to identify, what are we trying to accomplish? What are those goals? What are the KPIs that we're trying to deliver against? And making sure that the organization is aligned and that there's context around the data that we're collecting and how we're trying to report against it. I think for us, there's a lot of interesting areas, obviously monetization and doubling down on that, from either identifying subscribers to advertising opportunities to, we have an events business, which is really robust and exciting, getting prospects for that is also very exciting. And then there's the other opportunity, like what I call new business opportunities, right? So we're a global company, so we have a global operation. So how do we also look at our international territories and segment that data to identify what are the opportunities by region or by culture? And there's where you kind of have that lightning in a bottle, where you can really start to discover insights that can really help you either grow in that territory or grow engagement in that territory or grow viewerships or uniques. So that part is exciting, but you need to structure and make sure the team's aligned on that to set that up. I'd also say there's areas, I touched on it earlier, but like even in the automobile industry, like looking at how people are consuming our content on certain platforms and where they are when they're, like in travel mode, et cetera, things like that. Are there opportunities to where there's merging business models? How do we take advantage of understanding our users in those environments to service them in a way that kind of is the right way? Like make the best user experience in a car would be a great example of that.
Yeah, for sure. So how are you, if you think about some of the new technologies that are out there, Rob, how are you thinking about leveraging some of those technologies to learn more about your user base and be able to cater to them while maintaining that journalistic integrity? How, personalization is something that's a hot topic everywhere. Of course, it's been. Obviously, technologies allow us to understand our users better. How are you thinking about leveraging that?
Probably like everybody in the room. I don't know whether everybody's in the room, but the same way we're trying to personalization is key, right, to keeping people connected. So it's right now. I'd say it's a process that we're going through right now. As we are in looking at evolving the user experiences here, and for me specifically with a focus on the audio and video experiences and how we kind of bubble those up more and within our product. So I would think without getting too specific, looking at the data sets on that and how right now content is either performing on third-party platforms for us that we may want to emulate, or how content is performing on our own and operated, and obviously doing a lot of A/B testing and those kind of things helps get us further insights into where we want to move forward. So I think that did that address what you were looking for, Claudio?
Yeah.
Okay, good.
And going back to the issue of like sort of large data sets or people that may have internal data sets internally that are available versus maybe being able to get your hands on data out there that could be helpful. You doing back to your team, how are you thinking about how, sort of people that you're bringing in and building a team, how is that going to help you? How are you thinking about charging that team so that they have interesting work to do and then bring you back some interesting insights?
Yeah, I mean, the good thing for me, I would say, is I actually, as you may recall, when we worked together, Claudio, I built a team like this at my prior company, and it really unlocks a ton of value. So I'm kind of doing a 2.0 version of that here, where we'll be building it out. We're literally just starting that now. We just kind of created a new data lake for all of this content and having the data all cleaned up. But what we would be doing is kind of like socializing the data, really, like making it available to everybody, and then evolving the dashboards to empower really end users who need to make business decisions or critical business decisions to have access to data that they may have had partial access to, but now it's really going to be much more available for like the key stakeholders. So that alone should help drive value both for the company and then also for the end users.
That's great. So Rob, I want to give you just a second to think about this. It's maybe worth for our students in the audience or online. If you think about your career, right? Thinking back about how you've grown and changed as a professional. If you were to go back to school today, and if you wanted to get a chance to retool and reskill yourself into things, what do you think are some of the skill sets that are really important for students to build today to be successful in the new media and new entertainment kind of models? If you had someone that was that age was thinking, do I go back to school? How do I improve myself? What do I need to learn? Or even if you don't have time to go take on a formal, what do you want to be learning? What do you want to be reading so that you really stay up on the best possible thinking that can help shape a business?
Yeah, I would say, first of all, you have to always keep your eye on the consumer and where the consumer is going, because they'll ultimately drive the businesses forward and ultimately drive, especially if you're in a content business, will drive, kind of what kind of content you will be making to be successful. I think going back to school or just being in school or furthering, being a lifelong learner, uh, the concept of being a problem solver as you're in this business space is really, really important. I can't stress enough. And I think I was very lucky in my career because I had a couple of early um, career opportunities where I went into markets that were new. So whether it was when HBO launched internationally and it was one of the first services to go internationally, we had to problem solve a lot of issues in territories that never existed before. We had to introduce such things as windowing for content and all these things that are very standard now. But being in those conversations and then ultimately contributing to them being a problem solver was great. I was there from the transformation of traditional content into the licensing of iTunes content, both for audio and then video. And then I was part of that wave of content and licensing to streaming services such as the Netflixes of the world and Hulu's. And there were a lot of business issues. If anybody's in the room, they're very familiar with these that were very complex that had to really be thought through. And in some cases had to be redone after the fact because, we didn't see some of the things that were ahead of us on that. But so that flexibility, being a problem solver, trying to expose yourself to those conversations and understand the nuances of all of the business implications, but also the consumer implications are really, really critical. I mean, I could think back now about some of these things that don't seem very big deals right now, but were very huge at the time, such as Netflix putting all the episodes up at once was a big shift in the marketplace, right? And it had impact on the licensing of content and things like that. There were when Apple started licensing content and they wouldn't allow advertising in it, right? Or they wouldn't allow promos in it, or there were certain things like that. Those were big battles back in the day. So those now, what is the new version of that? You're looking at platforms that are moving really quick. The rate of change. I mean, think of Snap over the last couple of years and how many times they've had to reinvent themselves and evolve their product very quickly. Look at TikTok, how quickly that in the last 3 years has evolved itself and growing. And now they're kind of setting the pace for a lot of the media companies on how they're reacting and established platforms such as Facebook. So being an observer and being curious and a student of that is really going to help you as you kind of see these things evolve.
Well said. Very nice way to end. Rob, thank you so much for your comments and your thoughts.